Hey guys, it's Kevin again, and this is my review for Outlander Season 1, Episode 7, The Wedding. And I was really looking forward to this episode, especially because I heard from a lot of Outlander fans that this is when the books and the show, Outlander in general, like the series, it starts to get really, really good here. And after last week's episode, definitely it started to get really good. And I must say, this episode was fantastic. I loved this episode. I thought it was great, and one of the things I love about this episode was it was very much like the last episode, because the thing that I liked about the last episode, was it was one scene, but the whole episode was like one scene. This episode was very similar to that, except a little bit different. You know, not a lot happened in this episode. It was mainly just Claire and Jamie on their honeymoon, talking about, what happened before. We found out some details about the Beauchamps and the Frasers. We found a lot more about them, which I liked, and that was pretty much what the episode was, and a lot of sex. There was sex in this episode as well, which was good, because there had to be in this episode. It was a wedding episode, and I really liked that about this episode, so let's just get into this episode, because overall, I really enjoyed it. We start off with a flashback, and I like that we saw a flashback, because here's the thing. This is the second man that Claire's been married to. We need to remember that she is married to Frank, even though, sometimes the show, sometimes doesn't bring it up as much. Lately, Claire hasn't been bringing it up as much, probably because she's used to this environment. Frank's is still present. They have to remind us that Frank is still on the show. So Claire and Frank, they're walking down a small cobblestone street, and their hands are and, they're holding hands, and they pause in front of an important-looking building, and Frank asks Claire if she's ready, and this is when they were going to get married. She did not know it at the time. She's excited by the prospect of being married on the moment, and they eloped, surprisingly. I didn't expect that. That was definitely something very big. They eloped and everything, and I thought that was definitely very interesting. I was not, expecting that, and then we go to what's happening right now, and we see Claire and Jamie. They are now having their first kiss as husband and wife. The priest just says you may kiss the bride, and Jamie is eyeing her carefully as a crowd in attendance cheers. The only one not at least pretending to be happy is Claire. She is reminiscing about how a person could forget their previous lives, comparing to a broken strand of pearls, inevitably forgetting what the pearls or old life used to look like, but applauding the attempt to remember. There's a flash of her and Frank skipping into the courthouse before the audience is returned to would then return to a cozy room around the pub. And Claire is very bitter. She's asking if they'll be leaving anytime soon, and she's a little hesitant. Jamie explains that they'll be around until it's obvious the marriage is official. Not only has Claire been pressured into this marriage, but now she has to consummate the marriage that night in order for things to be legal and official. Because, the only reason they're doing this is so Claire, they can get Claire away from Jack. That's the only reason they're really doing this, is so Claire can get away from Jack, and the only way to get Claire away from Jack is for her to marry Jamie. That's the only way to do it. So it's very awkward between them, definitely very awkward, because, of course, they have to have sex, because it's not legal unless they have sex, because that's how it was back then. You weren't legally married until you had sex, so it's very awkward, and Jamie makes a joke about one of his kinsmen offering to watch them consummate things, and fears eased a bit, and Claire suggests a drink to further relax them. The drink doesn't seem to work, because Jamie teases her about how he didn't intend to force himself on her. He knows that he would never do that, and relaxes some more, and after a couple more drinks, she ventures to ask him some questions, the first being why he agreed to marry her in the first place. And I thought this was interesting, because we didn't really know why. He just, she said, let's get married, and he agreed to it, so his initial response is that, like her, he did not feel he had much of a choice. So we then flash back to a scene where Jamie's speaking with Ned, Dougal, and Murtaugh, and Ned is discussing the necessity of the law. And I really like the way this episode was done, told in flashbacks. It was sort of like a non-linear story, but I like the way that was done, because I just thought it was cool the way it was done. We got to see it from Claire's perspective and from Jamie's perspective. I like to see that a lot. Especially because the past few episodes, Jamie has not been in a lot. Episode 4, he was not in a lot. Episode 5, he was in, like, halfway through it. Episode 6, he was in one scene, but this episode, he was in throughout it, which was good. So Ned is discussing the necessity of law, including the part where the marriage needs to be consummated in order to be legal and witness present in the building. And if not in the room with them, Jamie asks if Claire's aware, and Dougal makes it clear that she doesn't have a choice. And when Murtaugh compares the arrangement to rape, Dougal argues that it's more persuasion than rape, and Jamie jumps in to defend her honor once again, and Dougal describes what he would do to Claire, warning him about the faking the consummation. And Dougal, changes tactics with Jamie, appealing to his sense of protection for her. And he's very impressed by how Claire withstood Jack's abuse, but points, because, she told him no, and he points out that he will treat her much worse if they have to turn her over to him in a few days as ordered. Because, remember, the plan is she's married to Jamie, but if they don't have sex, then they're going to turn her over to Jack, and Jack will deal with her. Jack's not in this episode, which was good because he didn't need to be. So, after this happens, Claire's still starting to soften towards Jamie and the arranged marriage with the knowledge that he married her to keep her safe. Not only does this marriage give her the protection of being a Scottish citizen now, but also of his clan, his family, and even his own body if necessary, and I thought that was good. And there's a moment where you think they're about to have sex, but she pulls away because at first she says, tell me about your family. And this is very interesting because we didn't really know much about Jamie's family. We know about his sister, who was almost, raped by Jack and all of them. We knew that, but we don't know about his actual family. And I thought this was interesting. So for a while, they're just, time is passing, they're continuing to drink, they're sharing stories with one another about their families and childhoods, until it's fully dark outside, and the room is lit solely by a number of candles scattered about, and she comments, we hear Claire's voiceover saying that they're getting to know each other as spouses for the first time. He is a born storyteller, just as all Scotchmen tend to be, and the tension between them has eased significantly, and you start to see some of the old gleam that has been between them since their earliest scenes together. And you can see that, you can see a lot of chemistry between them, definitely. Of course, they have a lot of chemistry, but then something very funny happens while this is happening. It looks like they're about to have sex, but then Rupert and Angus barge into the room, and they're disappointed to see that they are fully clothed. They went in there just to see if they had done it already, so I thought that was really funny when that happened, because it's just like they burst into the room, and they're so impatient. They just want to know if they had sex already so they can get it over with. And Jamie glances anxiously at Claire several times. He takes him out. He's literally like, get out of here. And he slams the door. I thought that was really funny. I like that Outlander, can have comedy in there. And that was definitely a really funny scene, in my opinion. I really enjoyed that a lot. I thought that was funny. And they then decide to have sex. The door's closed, and Claire breaks the silence, suggesting that it is too late and they should go to bed. However, Jamie tells her, whether she means bed or to sleep, and she remains very vague, but the look in her eyes gives him hope to go for it, because at this point, he's ready to do it. He's ready to have sex with her, because, she's waited so long, he has never had sex before, so he really wants to do this, He follows her lead, continues to approach things, and basically, he hesitates. She suggests he start because he doesn't know what to do. Because, again, he's never had sex, so he doesn't even know how to take off her corset. And I thought that was interesting. And he turns her back to him. She turns her back to him. And the look in his face is priceless. He tries to figure out how to begin. I thought it was pretty funny. Because, again, he's a virgin. He's never done it before. So I thought that was funny to watch, definitely. And he gains confidence, and they end up having sex, and it goes pretty quickly, surprisingly. I thought it was a very quick sex scene, and, definitely very quick, and they're left laying beside each other, staring awkwardly at the ceiling, and Claire breaks the silence by asking him if it had been how he thought it would be, and he remarks that it almost was, and then, after she assures him he won't laugh. By the way, he did say one very good quote that I like. He says, I'm a virgin, not a monk, and I thought that was a good quote. Apparently that's a very famous quote that he says, and I thought that was a really good quote in my opinion. So despite her promise, she does laugh, and he gives her his voice to his concern over whether she had enjoyed it or not, and she hesitates. He assumes that she means she did not, and as he goes on to talk about how Murtaugh and a number of others were right when they said that most women did not enjoy it, she relents and tells him that she actually did enjoy it, which was good. However, in her narration, she's guilting, she's very guilty about this, because obviously she's very guilty, because she kind of just committed adultery. Even though this is a different time period, even though Frank is not even alive right now in this time period, she has sort of committed adultery, and she really feels like an adulteress, a bigamist, and the thing is, she thinks of that because she enjoyed it. That's really why she feels that way, because she enjoyed it. But the thing is, if you think about, she hasn't, but at the same time she has. So I understand why Claire would do it. I understand why anyone would do it. She wants to protect herself. She just she wants to protect herself, and she doesn't care as much about getting out of there. She just cares more about, protecting herself now. She doesn't care as much about getting out of there, and she kind of is enjoying her life, but at the same time, she does still think of Frank and thinking, oh shit, did I just commit adultery? She's still thinking that. So I thought that was a well done scene. So she heads out the door in search of more food and drinks. She doesn't really know what she wants to do next because, again, she still thinks that she's committed adultery in her head. She's kind of guilty. And Jamie tries to warn her several times, but she misunderstands him, leaves the room anyway. She's met immediately by cheers from the crowd. They're all cheering her. Still unstares at the sight of her and her new husband half dressed. Jamie quickly ushers her back into the room, and, he's only in a shirt at this point. And his clan has been taunting him good naturally throughout, but in typical Jamie fashion, he plays it off as well. And, yeah, so after doing so in a very sincere tone, he's invited to sit with Dougal, and he seems too eager to return to Claire. So, back upstairs with Claire, he finishes telling her about his experience downstairs, explaining that he, being too eager to please her, would put him under her power. And according to Dougal, she asks his response, and with a sly grin, Jamie reports that he told Dougal that he's completely under her power and happy to be there. So Jamie ends up standing behind the chair, and Claire is sitting in before the fireplace and starts to play with her hair, touching her shoulder. Though they have already consummated the marriage, she seems a little uneasy again and pulls away from him. So, seeing him walk away, she regrets her reaction, apologizes to him, and he uses a Gaelic phrase which turns out to be him calling her his brown-haired lass, a fact he enlightens her on before telling her all the wonderful things he has noticed about her hair. And he touches her tenderly, and he explains they are Fraser colors. That's, asking about the new kilt. And the Mackenzie colors we have seen until this point. They're different. They're redder. So those are Fraser colors, and I thought that was a good scene overall. I enjoyed that. So then we see Jamie tells about how Murtaugh obtained the kilt from a Fraser widow and I thought this was an interesting reveal what happened here. We see another flashback. Basically, Murtaugh had obtained the kit from a Fraser widow whose husband had been dead for a very long time, and despite this and how much conversation he had engaged in to obtain them in the first place, she insisted on them being returned to her by the following night. So both men seem very confused by the request, but they don't argue it further, and Murtaugh reports that he had second thoughts about bringing the kilts to him in the first place, with how much the area is being patrolled by redcoats. But Murtaugh makes it pretty clear through the conversation that he does not approve of Jamie wearing the Fraser colors and the risk that it poses. So if the wrong person was to find out who Jamie really was, the redcoat would be on him in a heartbeat. And Jamie insists that since he only plans to be wed once, that he wants to do it in a way that would make his mother proud. And this opens a different train of conversation for the men, because Jamie asks Murtaugh his opinion of Claire and whether his mother would have liked her. And Murtaugh makes a joke about how he is not a gypsy who can commune with the dead to be able to retrieve her opinion of Claire, but softens after a moment when the jokes fall flat. And I thought that was a good scene overall. I thought that was funny. So after this happens, we then see that Claire expresses surprise over Murtaugh, and Jamie points out that there is more to his godfather than she realizes. He admits, too, that he used the kill as an excuse to delay Dougal's plans as much as possible without putting Claire at risk. And we then hear about these conditions. There were 3 conditions. That they would be married in a church by a priest. There were 3 conditions, and we find out what those conditions are. The first condition is that Dougal and Willie are being harassed by the local priest into performing the wedding ceremony, and the priest insists that there are certain protocols that must be followed before he can conduct the ceremony, but Dougal protests, saying that they don't have the time to wait as there are only a few days before they have to turn in Claire if she is still an English citizen, and the priest appears to be very ill. He sneezes several times during the conversation, and he appears very sweaty and dreary-eyed, not in good condition at all. And he's well enough to pull a dagger in response to Willie's threat, and Dougal ends up losing his temper, takes hold of the priest, apparently attempting to shake him into submission, and the priest mentions not wanting to preach another sermon in that dank, drafty church, and Dougal realizes what will convince him to incorporate money. And Jamie reports that the priest hardly skipped a beat that after the offer was made, asking when they wanted to hold the ceremony. And Claire laughs, saying that money in the church always seemed to be connected, and the second condition, he reveals, was for a wedding ring. That was the second condition, and she looks at the ring on her right hand, and she's marveling at the craftsmanship. Rupert and Angus had to get the wedding ring and everything, and it was very funny how they got it. you know, they asked about making a lady's wedding ring, to which the smithy replies that he has some extra silver, and then we find out what the third condition was. Now, that was he sent Ned on personality. Now, Ned appears to be hunting for a wedding dress for Claire in a local brothel and finding much more than he bargained for. None of the dresses are meeting his satisfaction. It does not seem to be helping that the girls are doing their best to entice him into only matters that are shopping for a dress. So she explains that it has never been worn and that no woman should wear another dress on her wedding day, and he pulls out his money to pay them. She realizes the opportunity there and coaxes one of the girls to distract them with other services, and I thought that was a funny scene with this girl, the lady and everything. I thought that was funny. And Claire accuses him of making the story up. She doesn't believe it. But he insists that he told exactly the way that Ned told it to him. And then we get a great moment. Jamie asks her about what she had been doing the day before their wedding, and she explains simply by peering at him through a half-empty whiskey bottle. We see a clip of Murtaugh dragging her out of bed that morning for the wedding, with a number of women in tow to make her ready. And we see the first moment he lays eyes on her before the wedding, and Jamie, sees her before the wedding. He describes seeing her in that dress, and I gotta commend Terry Dresbach on that dress. Terry Dresbach said that the wedding dress was her best work. I gotta commend her on that by far. That is by far one of the best wedding dresses I have ever seen. That was such a great wedding dress. And the wedding scene was just beautifully done in my opinion. And it was great when Jamie finally told her his full name, which is James Alexander Malcolm Mackenzie Fraser. And I thought that was just so great when that happened, and I really enjoyed that scene a lot. And yeah, so we saw the wedding, and I liked that it was out of order a little bit. It wasn't the wedding, then the honeymoon. I like that definitely. So Claire admits that some parts of the day are clearer than others, and we see her removing the gold ring from her left hand, tucking it into the bodice of her dress. She crosses the threshold of the church. She turns and walks some distance from Jamie after he said this Gaelic phrase to her, and she spins around and asks him to take off his shirt, and they end up having sex again, this time in a much more graphic way. This scene was definitely a lot more graphic, You can tell that Claire's enjoying herself more in this scene, because before she was kind of, she didn't know how to feel before, and now you can tell she's kind of enjoying herself more. And at first, Jamie thinks he has hurt her, and he's then fascinated because, she has basically, you know, she's can have that same reaction. He didn't know that she can have that same reaction and basically, ejaculate, basically. Not ejaculate, but be filled with so much pleasure and things like that. He didn't know that. And he asks if it happens that way every time, because again, he's never had sex, so he wouldn't know. So then we see what happens after this, and he says something in Gaelic beforehand, though, explaining that he said he thought his heart was going to burst, and we then go to the next morning, and Jamie's asleep, and Claire wraps herself in his unwrapped kilt, surveying the aftermath of the party downstairs. And now that everyone is retired elsewhere, it is the scene from the opening of the show. We then see the beginning of the show with the cat taking advantage of the leftovers, and all the candles and fires burn out. And Claire is not alone, however. She retrieves another bottle of whiskey, and Dougal surprises her, telling her about his visit to Captain Randall, and how he took the news of her marriage, as they all would have expected, but that he will not likely be bothering her again anytime soon, and he figures that Jack has better things to do other than one English woman, especially one who is now the niece of Colum, because she's now the niece of Colum Mackenzie. So he's been hinted towards in previous episodes, and Dougal, that's been hidden in previous episodes, and Dougal comes right out and propositions Claire. Now, this is a very interesting proposition here. He tells her that she's more than welcome to try out other delicacies, and she insists that she's married to Jamie and is saved from future harassment by Rupert's entrance, because at first he's saying, look, do you want to be married to someone else? You don't have to be married to Jamie, we can get you out of that. And she thanks Rupert for the ring, and he in turn congratulates her on the wedding, and she's returning upstairs, and Rupert makes a comment under his breath to Dougal about how even though Jamie was a virgin, she looks very well ridden, and Dougal hits him for it, and sends him outside to check on the horse once more. So I thought that was really funny stuff with Dougal in this episode. Just everything else, that was going on was really funny. So Jamie wakes to find Claire still wrapped in his kilt, staring into the fire. He slips behind her, and he sets a long strand of pearls around her neck, explaining they are Scotch pearls, and he compares the preciousness to him to how precious she is to him, and it becomes clear even if the marriage had been for her safety, it's much more than that to him now. He really likes this marriage. He actually thinks of her as his wife, even though this was an arranged marriage, he still does love her, and they end up having sex again. And then the next morning, Jamie is dressing quickly to head downstairs for something to eat, and Claire straightens up the room, and I love the way this scene was done. She's shaking out her wedding dress, and then the wedding band from Frank that she had forgotten up until this point flies out. Now, she had not been thinking about Frank for the whole episode, except for that one point when she thought she was committing adultery. And we are reminded, even after the beauty of the night she and Jamie have spent together, we might have forgotten about Frank. She hasn't thinking about Frank. That there is another husband she has not been apart from all that long, and as far as we are aware, is still planning her return to. And this really makes her aware of what her real mission is, which is to get out of here. She forgot about it pretty much. She pretty much forgot about it in this episode. And really, I gotta say that was a great way to end the episode, because the way the episode was done, it was mostly, again, Claire and Jamie just talking about what had happened before. And I really like seeing that in this episode. Really love the way that was done, but I cannot wait for next week. Next week is going to be awesome, because we're finally going to catch up with Frank in the 40s. We're finally going to find out what Frank has been doing all this time, and I'm really looking forward to that, definitely. We're going to see where he thinks Claire went, and I'm looking forward to that a lot, especially because Tobias Menzies, as I said, is probably the best actor on this show. But this episode was amazing. I loved it. I love seeing Claire and Jamie get closer. Claire, at this point, seems that, it seemed like Claire completely forgot about Frank till now, and now she's in a sticky situation, because she has two guys who she both really cares about dearly. She just has to make a choice here. Who does she want to be with? Does she want to be with Jamie, or does she want to be with Frank? She has a very difficult decision there, and she needs to kind of make a choice here, because if she doesn't make a choice, then it's not going to end well for her at all. It's just not. It's not going to end well for her. So, meanwhile, Jamie seems to be really into this marriage. She really likes the idea of it, and I'm wondering what's going to happen in the finale. I don't think she's not going to divorce Jamie. I don't think that's going to happen. But is something going to happen with Jack? I do feel something might happen there. We are going to see Jack in the next episode. Jack might not, Jack might say, you know what? Fuck this. I don't care that you and Jamie are married. I'm still getting what I want. I'm still gonna, you're still gonna be my spy, and I'm still gonna make you do that for me. Because, Jack wants Claire to be his spy, and, I'm wondering if Jack's actually gonna make Claire do that, even though she is married, I don't know if he's gonna listen. We'll have to see what happens there. And also, is Claire going to try to get out of there? I'm thinking the finale might be her trying to get out of there. And what's Frank been doing all this time? Very interested in seeing what's going to happen there. And has Claire committed adultery? Okay, again, she's in two different time periods. This is the 1700s. Frank is not alive, but has she actually committed adultery? I think she has, but do you guys think she has? I think she pretty much has. But I feel for Claire, because even though she has committed adultery, she's enjoying it, and she's kind of forgot about where she's from, because she's gotten so used to the 1700s that she's forgotten about where she's actually from. And I thought that was definitely very well done. I'm really looking forward to the mid-season finale. But let me know what you guys saw this episode. I will see you guys in my next video, which will be my review for Borak Empire. So I'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.